Hello, morning everyone. You all look different now from this perspective. And it's lovely to see so many friendly and familiar faces with us at HMS Caroline. And I hope to meet some of you throughout today's session. And for those of you who don't know me, who I haven't had the opportunity to meet with yet, my name's Gary Quate, and I'm the Food and Drink Tourism Manager here at Tourism Northern Ireland. And for the next kind of 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to be kind of taking us through a bit of a broad overview, really looking at food and drink and I suppose the overall importance that food and drink brings and is placed to the visitor economy here in Northern Ireland. But I'd also like to start by highlighting, Jess has mentioned that we have some of our original brand inspirers here within the room, and we've got some of our very newest developments here when we look at even across the way with Titanic distillers. Just that each of us in the room here have really had an important role to play and a significant role to play in terms of strengthening our reputation as a world-class food and drink destination to visit. But collectively, we've been shifting the perceptions that not only are we a nation that grows great food, produces great food, and is delivered by passionate people, but that we also have those world-class experiences that underpin Northern Ireland as a destination. So we're going to be really unpacking food and drink for the next few moments. Before, I suppose, we fully jump in, I think it's really important just to recognise and kind of look at the food and drink value chain. It is so varied, but each of the components that we have here have got such an important role to play in living up to the promise of our Embrace a Giant Spirit brand. Because each of these areas are really important visitor touch points. And traditionally, we may have thought of food or food and drink tourism, and perhaps we felt that that was the job of the restaurant or the hotel, the cafe, the food outlet, or the bar, really to deliver that great food and those high standards of customer care. But the landscape now has completely changed. Visitors now want to meet our local farmers, they want to meet our local food producers, they want to meet our brewers, our distillers, those that are creating those wonderful ingredients. And they also want to visit our markets that are situated in our local communities. So we all have a role to play in communicating our food and drink story and our food and drink message and really living up to the brand values then that Jess has already touched on this morning. So why is it so important that we are looking at food and drink today within the context of tourism? And that's because everybody eats. Not everyone that's coming into Northern Ireland is here to stay overnight on a holiday or a short break. Perhaps they're not staying in a hotel. They're not coming to great attractions like HMS Caroline, perhaps not even playing golf. But everyone that comes into the destination is eating. So they are looking to experience our food and drink. And I suppose it's up to us in terms of how we present that and how we position that and tell our story. But if a visitor then is maybe coming into Northern Ireland on a 2-day short break, potentially eating breakfast, lunch and dinner, we have got up to 6 opportunities then to either impress them with our food and drink, but in some cases we also have the potential to leave them disappointed. That might be through quality of ingredients, it might be by poor service standards, or perhaps we didn't meet their expectations when it came to value for money, or in some drastic situations, perhaps it's a combination of all of those factors. But on a really positive note, what we do know is that visitors to Northern Ireland, for the most part, they're rating their food experience as a really positive one. Our research shows that our visitors are calling out the quality of ingredients that they're experiencing in Northern Ireland. They're calling out the warm welcome, those high standards of service and customer care that they've received while they're with us. But they're also reporting that we're living up to their expectations when it comes to value for money. Back to Jess's point about that value proposition and how we actually champion that and bring that to the fore. So it's a huge contributor to the visitor economy in Northern Ireland. And pre-COVID, when visitor spend in Northern Ireland broke the £1 billion barrier for the first time, food and drink consumption equated to around 35% of total visitor spend. And I suppose that equates to about 350 million. So whilst they're huge numbers and it's great spend, there's always the potential for us as a destination to drive more, to get more from our visitors, and hopefully we'll touch on some of that as we move forward. But those food-motivated visitors that are coming into Northern Ireland are of significant value. They tend to spend more, they tend to stay longer, but often that they're buying products, both here while they're with us in Northern Ireland, but after they return home as well. So we've got a real opportunity to dial up that brand loyalty and to continue those transactions long after they've had the opportunity to spend time with us in Northern Ireland. So what is our food and drink ambition at Tourism Northern Ireland? Why are we as an organisation placing such an emphasis on food and drink? And what do we want to achieve? So it's really our giant ambition that we collectively position Northern Ireland as a leading food and drink destination of choice. Back to Jess's narrative earlier about increasing the availability and the accessibility of those demand-generating experiences happening across all parts of Northern Ireland, and we'll touch on some of the regional gaps that we've identified as we move through today's session. But again, building the commerciality and the capacity of those that are delivering for food tourism in Northern Ireland, we want to make sure that businesses are profitable, that they're delivering profitable tourism experiences, but those that are sustainable, not only in its broadest sense when we touch on sustainable and regenerative tourism, but also sustainable so that there's longevity within the business, and we want to support you in bringing those experiences to market. Again, like we have been doing and changing the narrative with our food and drink story, we want to intensify our efforts to ensure that food and drink is really featured heavily, but also championed through the collective marketing in the destination. And that's our role and responsibility through our consumer communications on Discover NI, but also how can we support you in our industry to share and develop the Northern Ireland story. So we know what the ambition is for the destination, but what do today's visitors want? What motivates them, as Jess said, when they're in the dreaming phase and the planning phase? What motivates them to hit the book now button? And how do we pique the interest of someone who is well-travelled, who's got lots of information now available at their fingertips like never before? And what are they seeking from their food and drink experience? And we've already touched on it this morning that, visitors don't want to experience what they can experience at home. They want to take a holiday or a short break that's an experience. They want to engage with something that moves them and connects them with the people here of Northern Ireland. And of course, a running theme through this morning's session, consumers are concerned about sustainability and the environment, but they're also conscious about where and how they're spending money. They're making choices in terms of how and where they're choosing to eat, and they want to know that the hard-earned money is actually going to make a difference to local businesses and local communities right across Northern Ireland. The rise in social media, and I think we're all guilty of kind of those bragging rights and that element of exclusivity. I want to show my friends and family that are watching my trip or short break through the lens of social media. And how can we start to shape and craft some of those experiences that are going to generate some traction with those that hang out and use social media to plan their trip? We know that visitors are spending more money on food and drink, but we also know that the makeup of families has changed. Grandparents taking extended trips with friends and family, and how is that reflected in the food and drink offer right across Northern Ireland? Not only in terms of our restaurants, cafes, visitor attractions, catering to everyone from granny right down to children. But also about creating experiences that the whole family can enjoy, multi-generational trips, people now wanting to go away and spend time together. How do we make it easy for visitors to access and digest that information? We'll hear a little bit about pairing food with other interests when we're talking about animating our outdoors and with culture and heritage. How do we weave our food and drink story into that communication? And how do we showcase those experiences that are unavailable where people live across other parts of Ireland, UK and abroad? And what are some of the food and drink trends then? So how are our consumers, how are they... What's their preference? What are their travel behaviours and some of the global developments that's having an impact on food and drink? So sustainable and locally sourced ingredients, again, that visitors are prioritising choices that source ingredients that are sourced locally and promote responsible practices. So that might be, back to Jess's point, your website, how you communicate those brands, those producers and providers that you're working with, how do you make it clear on your menus, and how your front of house staff and your staff throughout your establishment communicating and telling that story, making it really easy for visitors to understand what impact that you're having on them. Taking that another layer deeper is it's all about hyper-local food, food that showcases the ingredients that are unique to the region and really reflect the seasons. When we think of our grass-fed Dexter beef, our Mourne lamb, our Glenarm lamb, our local cheeses, 10 years ago we wouldn't have had such a dynamic dairy and cheese industry in Northern Ireland. So how do we start to elevate that? How do we position that on our menus? But also how do we get some of that additional added value through the plates and the produce that we're producing? And of course, food and drink. We always communicate in terms of food and drink. Food is vitally important, but how do we now start to lift up those amazing brewers, distillers, breweries, the cider producers right across Northern Ireland? So it's not about kind of forgetting the wine. The wine's really important. Visitors want it. It's great to drive additional spend, but how do we now start to influence pairing food with local drinks, local cocktails, and as I say, just give support to the amazing diverse range of producers that we have available on our doorstep. Visitors are now looking beyond the four walls of a restaurant or a cafe. They now want to see chefs moving out into the local communities, looking to collaborate to offer those really unique dining experiences. We've seen Paul Cunningham from County Down deliver a secret dining experiences. We've seen outdoor dining in Finnebrogue Woods. We've had access to Mussenden Temple and other National Trust properties, and food and drink has really been a catalyst to stimulate some of that change. Community-driven, consumers are looking for experiences that demonstrate collaboration with local communities that benefit both the visitors and the people that live there. Again, going back to responsible travel, sustainable travel, how can we offset maybe our carbon footprint to travel, and in turn booking experiences that are delivered and ran by local people, and where that money is going to make a difference and regenerate our rural communities. And street food and food trucks, we've seen the explosion during COVID, where now the popularity with more casual dining options has continued to grow. But it's allowed us now, I suppose, to up the quality. When we thought maybe a food truck's 10, 20 years ago, we're getting a completely different offer now. We're getting that innovation at that mid-range price point, and we see those food trucks popping up in our urban and our rural spaces and some of our key visitor attractions in Northern Ireland. So if they don't have time to sit down, maybe they haven't booked a restaurant experience, how can we still deliver to drive value and quality through some of our more casual options? But what are some of the areas maybe that we're not living up to our Embrace a Giant's brand promise? So I'm going to use the next couple of minutes just to go through a really top-line SWOT analysis that relates to food and drink and experience development. We've already talked about some of those strengths throughout this morning's session. Our amazing producers, our low food miles. Like Northern Ireland, we boast one of the shortest supply chains probably, anywhere else in the world. And I don't think yet we're communicating that story. And in some cases, I don't actually think we're exploiting all of the growers, producers, artisans that live on our doorstep. So how can we be a little bit better at that? But we do have that amazing more welcome, our consistently high service standards. But what about some of the weaknesses then that we know exist? Lack of awareness. There is a perception gap, so visitors aren't necessarily coming to Northern Ireland on the strength of that amazing food and drink experience. But again, our research shows us that we are delivering, that they are calling out the quality, the experience that they have. So how do we drive that up? And that's certainly an area that we at Tourism and I will be working to develop, but collectively with you all. The availability of food and drink experiences, we do have limited spread. We've got limited appeal and limited opportunities to engage at different parts of Northern Ireland, but also at different parts of the day. So looking at evening and those nighttime experiences, including our urban areas, after 6 o'clock from a food and drink experience perspective, it tends to die off. But visitors are consistently telling us that they want more to do at the weekends and that they also want more to do in the evenings. So that's a strategic area that we'll be looking at as we move ahead. Festivals and events. We've got a small number of really key food and drink festivals and events, but there's an opportunity for us really to look at seasonal extension and look to support new food and drink events happening across Northern Ireland. Linking those destinations. Derry, Londonderry, we have our legendary food and drink network. We've got Taste Causeway, we've got Savour Visit Mourne. Armagh, Heartland, how do we now start to use those really innovative and agile food and drink networks, but actually connect the networks, get them collaborating, and hopefully stimulate that growth right across Northern Ireland? And scalability. We do have limited capacity and capabilities. For our most unique, most authentic and engaging experiences, often they're relying on sometimes one-man bands or a small group of people. So what happens if we don't start to look at succession planning, future-proofing those businesses? So it's going to be our job at Tourism Northern Ireland to look at scalability and look at building capacity within those operating within the visitor economy. But what about our opportunities? And today I think is a really important one. How do we embrace our new tourism brand, embrace a giant spirit, and how do we widen those opportunities out for the food and drink industry to adopt and to utilise and to champion that embrace a giant spirit brand? And sustainability and regeneration is a theme that we will be picking up on, but how do we leverage our potential as a destination with really strong sustainability credentials, low food miles, land, water and sea, back to the inspires that Jess has talking about? How do we leverage all that and really position Northern Ireland as a green, sustainable, clean destination? But also then, how do we look at delivering those compelling experience in an exclusive or a premium way, looking at venues for high-end consumer incentive and travel trade market? Jess has already talked a little bit this morning about really crafting your experience to get it right for the consumer market, but we also know then that when we move into the business-to-business space, the incentive market and the travel trade market, that we've got a real strong opportunity to dial up some of those experiences and premiumise the offer that we have. But it's also about raising our visibility, pride and profile, and actually how we use our collective tone of voice to champion and position Northern Ireland as a great place to visit. And what are some of the threats? I won't go through. Jess has already touched on, for businesses, we're dealing with the impact of COVID, impact of global shocks on the industry, financial sustainability, access to talent and retention, and we'll address some of those issues as we move through a bit later in the session. But there is significant competition from other destinations who are perhaps a little bit more advanced with their food and drink development, with their food and drink story, and that potentially is one of our biggest threats from a food tourism perspective. So it is going to be my role to support our industry and actually moving that forward so that we can continue and cultivate new opportunities to get additional market share. So we talked a little bit about gap analysis and regional spread and moving people across all parts of Northern Ireland. And I did mention some of the amazing food and drink networks that already exist in Northern Ireland, and they're out in market, they're selling the experiences. But actually, where you do look, so the kind of the purple and the yellow here are our high supply of food and drink experiences. But actually, when you get into our more rural areas, when we're looking at kind of Fermanagh, Omagh, perhaps even into some of the areas within the northwest, County Armagh, we don't have a lot of experiences there where we can start to move people, give people motivations to travel, convert those day trippers into overnight stayers, and convert our 2 and 3 day visitors into longer short breaks. So I'll explain to you as we move forward what we're doing to address the gaps in our provision. And again, Antrim there is dominating the food and drink scene in Northern Ireland and accounts for more than a third of the overall offerings. The vast majority of those are in Belfast. County Down then follows, representing about 27% of our overall offering. Derry Londonderry represents about 14%, but it is the counties Armagh, Fermanagh and Tyrone representing the smallest segments of food and drink tourism in Northern Ireland, and we'll be working with businesses to develop that. So what are we doing in food and drink development? We've kind of talked about our successes. We talked about some of the opportunities where we can really start to work together to raise our pride and profile. We are actually working on an experience development plan for food and drink that will outline our commitment and our journey to food and drink tourism development across the next 3 to 5 years. We have consulted with many of you in the room, both at stakeholder, local council and at industry level. And we are finalising, I suppose, that plan and that roadmap that will take us through the next 5 years. And we will come to you and bring that action plan when that has been worked through. As Jess has suggested, on tourismni.com, we have got a whole host of resources. If you are thinking about a new experience, if you are currently offering food and drink as part of your tourism or hospitality offer, how can we improve? How can we hit on some of those trends? And the toolkits are a really good platform for you from which to start. But also do feel free to reach out as well. Happy to come out and meet with you in your own business, your own place of work, and continue those conversations. We do have research. We've got our cost calculators. We've got our pricing templates, sustainability resources. But back to, I suppose, that regional, that gap analysis there of trying to stimulate new experiences happening across each of the regions. We did just launch in the past couple of weeks an expression of interest for our new food and drink experience development programme, and we are supporting 14 businesses then to develop those market-ready food and drink experiences that will underpin and sit within the Embrace Your Giant Spirit framework and will be ready, hopefully, to go to the market towards the end of 23, 2024. So those expressions, we really put an emphasis on counties from Fermanagh, Tyrone and Armagh. And we also then wanted to attract those experiences that have the potential to improve those levels of activity at off-peak times, in addition to those to drive the regional spread, but also support the evening and the weekend economy. And we've talked a lot, I suppose, about drink, raising the profile of our drinks producers. And we will also be working on phase 2 of the Northern Ireland Spirit Trail and Distillery Passport. So folks, I appreciate that was a whirlwind kind of touch in on food and drink. It is so broad, it is so varied, it is so dynamic. I love working with the sector, and if there's any questions or any way that I can help you within your business, move your idea forward from an idea. How do we make what's ordinary and everyday to us as extraordinary to our visitors that come into Northern Ireland? And I'd be really happy to work with you. So that is me. Folks, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you.